Everybody, it is Romania Black, and I'm very excited today because we're on episode 20 of March Comes In Like a Lion, and we're at the 3 episode mark for season 1, which is pretty exciting. I feel like we're in a very appropriate spot for that point in the season because Shimada is about to face Souya in their 4th match. It is literally do or die. If he loses this match, the tournament is over and Souya has won. So it's all down to the wire, right? So I had to get my special coffee for today to prepare for this. So yeah, so I had to watch ahead because I'm recording ahead for the month of July and because I just couldn't wait. I was like, I want to see how this match goes down and to see what we get. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to finish up everything this episode or not. It very well could be. I talked in the last episode, I think that there, in my mind, are 3 possibilities this show could take. One is that he loses this round, and it's just a shutout. And the lesson to Ray could be that even when this happens, you keep moving forward, you keep practicing, you keep getting better, and you keep chasing that beacon of light that you're seeking, your rival, in this case, Souya. The second option is I think he'll win this match and then be able to get one step closer to going back to his hometown to face Souya, but I don't think he's going to make it past the 5th match. And then the final option is that he makes it, he wins this one, he wins the next one, but I don't think he'll win the 6th one at his hometown. But I don't know. I don't think he'll win the whole match. Absolutely not. But the odds are really stacked against him. Like I could see him winning this match, but then it's 3-1. Is he, and if it takes all this out of him to win one match, is he going to be able to win the next? I don't think so. I don't know. I think he's not going to make it to his hometown. And he's also facing his stomach problems right now, which puts him at a disadvantage. And you know Souya's not going to go easy on him because that's the last thing Shimada would want. So there's lots of lessons to be learned, I'm sure, from this type of situation that will be very helpful for Ray. And I've just mainly appreciated the fact that not only has in previous episodes we've talked about Hayashida stepping up as his teacher, but I think that Shimada is a great mentor for Ray because he's similar to Ray, but Ray's kind of similar to Souya in ways. So it's neat for Ray to kind of see things from Shimada's perspective and go from there and see, okay, well, what do I take from this workshop, from this experience of watching him face Souya? I mean, Nikaido is taking like, what is this grand stage going to be like, as he thinks he's going to be there one day. So there's a lot of good lessons that I think are going to be helpful for Ray, especially moving forward in this series. So I'm glad that Ray's getting to experience them. And plus it's been nice the last couple episodes for us to actually see like shogi matches. It's felt more like a sports anime, and I really am glad because I know when this series won, a lot of people were like, is March Comes In Like a Lion a sports anime? But I feel like with this tournament, it definitely proves that it is. It just, there's so much more to it than just a sports anime. So that's really exciting. But yeah, I'm super excited, y'all. I can't wait to dive into this episode. I hope you all are excited as well. I want to give a very quick shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank you all so much for your support and your kindness as I watch this series. So a special shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Bryant Reed, to Dana, to Danger Zone, to Davarin, to Danny Donmai, to Destiny Marie, to Damage 3245, as well as Ichu, Eric, Kiri, El Freya, Ghostly Turnip, Fisho, Lyndon, Matthew Palfiniere, Murphew, Nameless Monster, Nicholas, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Trails, and Translucent Men. I greatly appreciate all of y'all's support. All of my love. So yeah, we've talked enough. We might as well start episode 20 and see what we get. So we're going to start episode 20 of March Comes In Like a Lion, and we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do it to it. Well, this episode was gut-wrenchingly horrible. No, it was not horrible. It was heartbreaking, but it wasn't horrible. It was the opposite of horrible. Oh my God. Oh my God. Damn. This episode was one of the best ones so far, I think. This episode was so good. There's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode, I feel. I feel like there's a lot of moments in this series, in this episode particularly, that are going to come back. And I'm going to be like, remember back in episode 20? I feel like it's going to be one of those moments. But damn, Shimada. Oh my God. There's so much I love about this episode. I thought about bringing Whiteboard Kun out, but then I feel like the things that I would just be writing would just be to write. They're not really connecting anything. They're just pointing out a few things. Although this episode nearly made me cry, and the only reason I didn't is because my dog kept pestering me to throw a ball, and I'm like, I'm trying to react, you goon! So, sorry, if you were expecting tears, you can blame Huckleberry on that one. He kept bringing me back out. But I love Shimada so much. He's one of my favorite characters in this whole series because of just how real he is and about how aware he is. And I feel like by the end of this episode, Ray kind of gets to a certain position that he's at, and I want to talk about it with you all because this episode was really inspiring despite all the heartbreak, because it really is like, if you have a passion for something, it is going to be hard, right? And it makes me emotional just talking about it. But the idea of this snowstorm, there's so much to get from this episode. We need to go through it. I love the idea of we've compared Ray and Goto and KYOTO to these storms, these tempests, these torrents, these hurricanes. And then you have Souya, who is a snowstorm, right? And there's different comparisons to him that we'll get throughout the episode. But I love the idea of Shimada being dazzled by Souya. And that's kind of the problem. I don't think Souya believes he can beat Souya. I don't think that Shimada believes he can beat Souya. I don't think he can. He wants to play in his hometown so badly, and he keeps fighting. But Shimada's mentality is, I love this game so much, and it's such a part of me that I'm going to keep playing it, and I'm going to keep doing it because that's all I know to do. All I know to do is to keep on fighting the storm and hoping I can weather it and see through to the next leg of the journey. And I feel like by the end of this episode, Ray comes to a slightly different conclusion than Shimada, and that's why he's not going to ask Shimada the question anymore. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. But the fact of the matter is, we talk in another series that I'm looking at. It's about visualization and victory, about visualizing victory. And the idea is, if you can't visualize yourself winning, you're not gonna win. If you can't visualize the victory, it's not going to happen. And I talked about this in a couple other series that I'm currently watching. But the big thing is with this particularly is mainly free run, if you're curious. With free run Beyond Journey's End. In that series, I'm watching at the same time as I'm watching this one. With free run in that series, there's a concept about you can't beat your opponent if you don't think you can beat your opponent. If you can't visualize yourself on their level, then you won't be on their level. That's all there is to it. And I think there is something to that. Even if there is a difference in innate natural talent, Shimada is living proof that you can work to get to that level. You can keep working. You can keep advancing. It's going to be hell. It's going to require sacrifice, as we're about to talk about. It's going to require a lot of you. But if that's what you want, you can get there. But Shimada's hit a wall where he cannot see himself beating Souya. And what ends up happening is the move that lets him beat Souya that Ray notices on the board, Shimada couldn't see it because he'd given up at that point. He had already conceded in his heart before he even got to that point. And granted, he was having ulcers. He was sitting there fighting ulcers, and he was not mentally present 100%. So I do blame some of Shimada's sickness on that. But at the same time, I think that he had in his mind, as we see in this dream, in this vision, he had convinced himself it wasn't going to happen. Meanwhile, Ray hadn't given up, and he was able to see through the move. And we're going to talk about it when we get further into this discussion. But I was just like, I love this idea of the dazzling snowstorm. And I love it transitioning to the sunset. He transitions from the cold fury of the snowstorm to the sunset. This whole scene of him being back in his dream on the farm working and just being there. And then the moment that we see the girl with his hypothetical daughter, I about lost it. Because, yeah, basically saying if I, 5 years ago, if I'd quit trying to move up the ranks, I could have still been with my girlfriend. We could have been back on the farm. I could have had this job farming in my hometown, and I would have had this little girl, and I would have just hung out with the old men, still playing shogi, and my dream could have been something that moved away, right? And it's funny, in the sports anime that I watched before this series in Blue Lock, there is an episode in that series where they call into question, like, is what happens when you don't live up to your dream. And it kind of does the same thing in Blue Lock in that episode. I won't tell you which episode. Go watch Blue Lock. But in that series, there's an episode that kind of does the same thing as Shimada's dream here, where Shimada has this dream, and in his dream, he's wondering, if I didn't end up pursuing this, pursuit to play professional shogi, I could have had this life with this wife and this daughter. And that's something I hadn't thought of. Shogi players, Ray makes enough money as a shogi player professionally to maintain enough income to have rent. But that's by himself. And he doesn't eat a lot. We've seen what he eats. He lives a pretty meager, humble existence. But I hadn't thought about it. If you're going to have a wife and a kid, being a shogi player, I mean, Kota makes it work. Kota's family seems like they're living fine. But we don't know what the circumstances behind Kota is. Kota could come from money, right? In a lot of times situations where it's like, oh, they're a professional player. Yeah, but what's their family background like? Did they have money growing up? Did they have financial security? Did they have support? Shimada's from a rural farm town. His family doesn't exactly they're not loaded where they're sitting away with all this money. So yeah, having a stable job versus the pressures of shogi where it takes so much out of you, some people wouldn't be able to keep a relationship with somebody like that. Now, you have Ray's dad, biological dad, who ended up becoming, the manager at a hospital because that was a much more financially stable job for his sister and himself and his wife. Kota is professional, but again, he could come from money. His wife may make a lot of money doing what she does. We don't know that, right? So in Shimada's case, yeah, I could see why, unfortunately, the girlfriend was like, you keep pursuing this dream and it's not leading you anywhere. It's me or shogi. He chose shogi. And in this dream, he's imagining what life would have been like if he had gone back with her and he could have had a kid and had this life. But we'll talk more about that in a second. What I'm getting with Blue Lock is in that episode, one of the characters kind of has this ultimatum of you either pursue your dream and you accept the sacrifices that are going to come with it, what you're going to have to do to yourself, your mindset, the things around you, your relationships, or you let that dream go and move on to something else. And in this dream, he moves on to something else, which is working on the farm. But the thing of it is, the thing that I like in this dream that we see, and it's so sad seeing it with this little girl who has dark hair like him, like, how dare you give us this, right? He's like, I couldn't get past the third Dan League and I moved back home. And when he said, I feel like I'm going to cry, I'm like, he's surrounded by all these people that are like his family and everything. Oh, I'm like, that's so hard. And he's like, I miss them so much and they're here. And the thing about it is, when he said that I miss them so much, oh, it's going to make me cry. I got to throw this for heckle, otherwise I will. It's suggesting that they aren't there anymore. I'm like, oh. Like, because he pursued that dream, he didn't get to see that they weren't there anymore. I'm like, oh. That just wrecks my spirit. And so he's like, I could have had a chance with them. I could have had a chance to have this family. But again, those are all hypothetical situations, right? You don't know if that's actually what was going to happen. She could have broke up with him once he moved back to the farm. It's just what he's thinking in that moment. But the point is, he's like, everyone's been cheering me on for so long. And they're like, it's okay, Kai, which is Shimada's first name. They're like, happiness is something you can find no matter where you are. Which is a great sentiment, the idea that you can find happiness anywhere. But the point with Shimada that he realizes here, after he says that, you live with all your might, that's enough. It's enough, Kai. The thing is, in that moment when he wakes up and has the ulcer, he's like, I was playing shogi even in my dream. So the thing that makes him happy is shogi. he finds happiness in it. And it's this idea that I wanted to become a professional and I regretted it so much, I still had stomach pains. So in that moment, Shimada realizes, he's like, I could have had a wife and a kid, and I could be back with my family back in that farm town, but I would have regretted not pursuing being a professional shogi player, and it would have made me have the ulcers either way. So it's like, do I give up on the dream and regret it, or do I keep moving through the storm because that's what I want? And he chose to move forward for him. Oh, it's so good. Oh, and we'll connect it to Ray and all that, but it is this idea that, yeah, no matter what field you are in, no matter what you do, if you want to be successful, there is a price to pay. There are tolls to pay. You have to go through certain checkpoints, and it's going to be a struggle. The ladder climb is not easy, and it's a struggle no matter what. And you either keep struggling towards that dream, or you give up and you move on to something else. And it's the question of, is giving up and moving on to something else going to leave you with regrets, or is it going to be worth it? Can you give something up and move on? And for Shimada, he basically realized in his dream he couldn't move on. Like, oh. It kills me. It makes me so sad. And they're like, this must be like a nightmare. There's a strong possibility he'll lose 4 losses in a row. And the thing was, too, in addition to his ulcers, he also had to deal with all these... No one in the whole tournament believed in him. Ray was the only one that believed in him. Everybody else was talking behind his back about how he was going to lose. And I was like, oh, like, even if you don't think that that's going to affect you, it's going to affect you. Like, even if you don't think that you're like, oh, it's just talk behind my back, it's not a big deal. No, it psychologically does mess you up. No matter if you think you talk yourself out of it or not, it's still messing you up. But he's like, I don't want to bother them and get them to apologize. And then when he said his stomach hurts, he's like, I've got to get ready. And he's like, the me who couldn't become a professional and moved back to the countryside, or the me who risked everything to make it this far and now faces 4 losses in a row. Which one is the nightmare? And then he's like, I'll find out by seeing it through to the end. Like, at the end, he ends up losing, so it's like, which one was worse? Moving back home and not achieving your dream, or suffering while you strive to achieve your dream? I feel so badly for him. And the thing is, even after this match, after losing, he's not going to quit playing shogi. He's still going to try again and start back from square one. I mean, not totally square one. He still is an A-ranked player, but I feel like he had given up in this episode even before it began. He was just trying to push himself through, but he didn't think that he could do it. I love the symbolism of, as we talk about Souya, as Ray mentions him, we see a spider in the web. We see him launching the attack. Yeah. So the sealed move, right? So they adjourn when they do the sealed move. And I want to see that piece of paper again when Smith, like, pulls it out. But I like that with Shogi, they're all, like, contemplating if his moves are too soon or everything. And again, they were all doubting him. They were all like, oh, he's already given up. He's panicking. And Ray was the only one who was like, no, you can make this work. This will all be fine. It's just, when Ray started running to get to the room to watch the match, I for a second thought he was going to burst into the room where Shimada was facing Souya, but that would be highly unprofessional and would not be accepted. But I really wish he'd been able to run into the room and been like, don't give up, Souya! Or give him some, like, encouraging words, but it was too late at that point. But yeah, these guys at the buffet line, they're just doubting him so much. And Ray's like, no, I feel like he's not panicking. He's being proactive. This is fine. But everybody else has already given up on him. And it's so sad. I do like Shimada's, like, green, his yukata there. It looks really good. And Ray was being positive, everybody. He was being optimistic and saying that it's not as bad as they say. Like, it's almost like Ray gets punished in this moment for being positive and optimistic. But I think in the end, it's going to be for Ray's benefit. it's so important for Rei's character, one, that he didn't give up. He kept moving forward and thinking good for Shimada. And two, the fact that he figured out the move that Souya figured out, that's going to be a big thing. And I don't know if anybody's going to point it out to Rei or not, but to me, it feels like such foreshadowing that Rei figured out the move that could have stopped Souya. I'm like, that is such foreshadowing to me that Rei and Souya are going to have to eventually battle one another way down the line. Even if it's not this season or next season, way down the line, they're going to have to face each other. It's going to happen. And I'm like, yes. Okay. So we'll see, right? I'm so curious, but I feel like that's foreshadowing that Rei has that spirit of not giving up that could take on Souya. And we're going to talk about it here in a little bit. But so then Nikaido answers the phone. Nikaido calls him being like, why didn't you tell me about Shimada being sick? I love that Nikaido has a limo with his name on it. He is literally like the kind-hearted version of Seto Kaiba. Nikaido is literally the sweet, innocent version of Seto Kaiba. Who knew? Screw the rules. I have money. That's literally him. He has his own limo. He has his own helicopter. And so I could definitely see why Shimada was like, please do not tell him that I'm not feeling well. He will fly a helicopter and land at the hotel. The fact that he landed a helicopter in a elementary school courtyard to go and get Shimada. Oh my God. And even after he gets off the phone with Rei, he's like, I could have flown a helicopter there. Like he was thinking it. Like Shimada's like, don't tell him. He'll fly a helicopter here, make a scene. Don't do it. And Nikaido's like, I could have made a scene. But he had a match. So we don't find out who his match was against, but he tells Rei to take care of him. And I love that, again, Rei seems like the type of person, I don't know if Rei has realized it, but Rei is the type of person that likes taking care of people. And he likes being needed, right? And so I feel like with Kyoko, Rei is going to be one of those characters that's going to try to take care of her. He's going to try to help make her a better person, whatever happens with that. But when Nikaido's like, I need you to stay with Shimada and make sure he gets home, Rei's instantly like, yes, I'll do it. I'll stay with him. It'll be fine. That's the type of person I think Rei is without realizing it. He just isn't self-aware about that at that point. But yeah. So then the one pretty boy, I forgot about him, but he was the pretty boy from earlier on that Rei beat in the one match, right? Mm-hmm. He gets kicked out of being an observer because he had the flu. Like he just wanted to be on TV, but had the flu, and they're all like, really? Seriously. That is so irresponsible, especially in these post-COVID times. If you don't feel good, don't be there. Like, that's so arrogant. He just wanted to be on TV. I'm like, I tell students all the time, I'm like, I don't care if it's test day or finals week or whatever. If you are sick, no one wants to get sick. Stay home. Don't come here. You're fine. So I like that Smith gets bumped up to being the observer. And I like that the chairman gets a little serious in that moment. The chairman is like, if you infect the players, I'll kill you. Stand up and get out if you have to. And they're all like, okay. So then he gives Smith the job of being the observer. And Smith is like, oh, I have to go to the match room and I have to give out the sealed move. So the sealed move, it looks like it lets you take a piece and automatically put it on the board. So it's like your trump card. You get one per tournament. You get to use this one time. And then this was Shimada's ace in the hole. That should have been foreshadowing in itself that it wasn't going to work out, but I was hoping that it would. So then I like that Smith says that he's like, well, I'm observing someone else's match before my own. He's like, I haven't even had a title match yet. He's like, isn't this bad luck? Isn't like being like the bridesmaid before the bride? And I like the chairman's like, a lot of these fools have never had a title match. You're fine. It will be okay. He's like, you can do the sealed move thing. So I didn't realize, which it seems quite naive of me, but I thought that the chairman was like a benefactor. I thought he was a shogi player, but I didn't realize he was a master. I didn't realize that. I thought he was just like a really benevolent, enthusiastic shogi player that had administrative prowess and had like rose up the administration to get to this point. I didn't realize you have to be a master to be in this state. One, that explains why a lot of people respect him, because he is a master like Souya. He's the 16th master. Two, I now am so fascinated and want to know how he plays shogi, because so far everybody that's played, they all kind of have their different styles. Like Shimada's very practical and pragmatic, but it's like the torrent ocean. And then Rei is like a storm. Souya is like a blizzard. Goto is like dark murky water. I like a bog. I want to know what the hell. I feel like the chairman, it would be like a volcano, like a flame. I feel like he would be insanely offensive. The dragon guy seems very offensive, but during shogi, from what we've seen so far, even when the characters are really like outgoing and enthusiastic, it's very like quiet, reserved. It's like a calm fury under the surface. It's very implied. I can't picture the chairman being quiet during a shogi match and being like an intimidating presence, but maybe he's so fiery that it is intimidating. I don't know. I want to see him play now. Basically, I want to see him play because I need to see this play style, because I'm kind of floored. But yeah, and then Smith is so flamboyant and over the top. He's just like, getting a sealed move before I get my own is like putting a stamp on my friend's marriage registration. I'm like really, Smith? Ridiculous. He's like, it's such an honor. But yeah, so he shows the sealed move on TV between the two of them to put the move there. 6F silver. And I liked it. I love how Shimada looks in that one shot. But Huckleberry, be quiet. But it feels like, it definitely feels in that moment like he kind of knows this is the trump card. This is like the final move he can make, and if it doesn't work out, it's over. He feels a bit more resigned in that moment, and Souya even seems a little bit, it's hard to read Souya because he has such like the Rei poker face, but he almost seems kind of like, really, we're doing that now? So then Rei gets conned into doing this commentary for the second part of the match alongside this other guy who is absolutely terrifying. Shogi Dragon Raido Fujimoto. He looks so intense. He has like the teeth. He looks like Kaido from One Piece if he was a shogi player. Has the teeth, has the crazy eyes. He just looks so intimidating. And Rei's just like with two hands on the mic being like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is my first time public speaking. And then here's the thing. Rei does not want the pressure of having to become a master. He's like, I know I made my debut in middle school. He's like, but it's not that big of a deal. It's fine. And everybody's putting all this pressure, and they have been putting this pressure on it for most of the season. I actually kind of like what the Dragon Raido says. I kind of like what Fujimoto says in this, because he kind of gets mad about it, right? And he says, even with the middle schooler debut, you took too long to become C1, to get off C1. He says, I made my debut as a first-year high school student like a year later, but at his age, I was at B2. He's like, what I'm trying to say is, and then he like gets all crazy. He's like, I'm more impressive. That's my point. And Rei's like, I didn't say you weren't impressive. He's like, well, answer me this, boy. And Rei's like, I didn't bring up this conversation. He's like, why is the world so enamored with the expression middle school debut? And I kind of agree with Fujimoto a lot. I think that people are putting an unjust amount of pressure on Rei, saying that he has to become a master and wondering when he's going to do it, and like trying to rush him into it as if the speed of that ascension is important. I mean, if anything, knowing how long it's taken Shimada to rise up through the ranks, I think that that's more commendable, being able to ride out the storm and persevere. I think that's almost more commendable than just flying through and not having to work as hard, seemingly, for that rank. I mean, obviously you have to work hard to get there, but I don't feel like the time allocation is as big of a factor as it's being made out to be. And I kind of agree that Fujimoto's like, why are we placing all of this emphasis just because he was in middle school when he had debuted? He's like, it's confounding to me. And he's like, future master, nobody knows that. and the goal is to become a professional. And I agree. It's like nobody knows if he's going to become a master or not. So he's like, why are we putting so much weight on it? And he's like, we're supposed to become a professional, not having the goal of become a master at all costs. He's like, it's something I can't abide by. And I'm like, He's like, and so then he's like, the Japanese posit that having no desire is a rather beautiful thing doesn't make sense than having a goal is good, but having desires are bad. So yeah, I feel like it's the difference between your desire and your goal. And Fujimoto is saying that, everyone probably has a desire to be a master, but why is it that just because you debuted at a certain time, you have this goal pushed upon you, and that's to be expected, but having a desire is not supposed to be expected. He's calling out kind of the double standard in the system, and I kind of like it. I like that Fujimoto's saying, like, this is kind of ridiculous that you guys are putting all this pressure on him. I've worked really hard, and I'm doing really good. Why am I not getting recognized? And so I kind of agree with him. I think that he says it in a very brash way, and Ray's just over here cowering, like, under the weight of all of it. He's like, desire, goal, they're the same thing. And everybody's like, what is happening? And he's like, but thanks to that weird fellow, I've been held back from it. But I swear I'll drag him down and become a master myself. So yeah, so Fujimoto's like, I want to take over and become a master after Souya, but he keeps on keeping me from the rank. And I'm like, so Souya is the one to beat. But I like it. I like Fujimoto's character. He's very, very intimidating, right? Once I take the title, it's mine, and I'm going to hold on it till the day I die. Interesting. The only thing about Fujimoto that I don't like is that he disregards Ray and just kind of like shrugs aside Shimada. Like, I do feel bad for that. I like when Ray's like, Shimada, you've had to play against these guys all the time. Like, I feel so bad for you. Like, he's like, stomach ulcers are the least of your concerns at this point. And poor Ray, he's like, this seems impossible, but we know that Ray's gonna get there eventually, right? So would Shimada have won if he didn't have the stomach ulcers? That's the big what if. That's the big question mark. The big, like, that's the Schrodinger's cat. Would he have won otherwise? I don't know. I don't know. I think that's not a fair question to ask because there's too many variables, but if he wasn't, here's the thing. This is kind of the thing that makes it even more complicated. Even more complicated. Oh my God, my throat got something caught in it. Hold on. Sorry. The thing that makes it even more complicated is that because he had the ulcers and because it was making him be more decisive in that moment, he kind of built up this speed and this kind of rhythm that if he hadn't had that same rhythm and urgency with how he felt, would he have ended up in a situation where the one move that Ray and Souya notices, if he had been at a different performance level that day, would he have gotten to a position where that move could have been possible? I don't know. I don't know if that move could have been possible if he had been in another state. So it's hard to tell. He could have been feeling a lot better, but would he have had a different confidence? Would he have been arrogant? Would he have made a mistake? We don't know. So it's so hard to say that the ulcers were the cause of his loss because he may not have gotten into that moment where he could have made that move to trap Souya if he hadn't been in that state. So it's just hard to predict. You really can't say whether it is or not, but in this moment it makes him make these bold moves and everybody's like, oh, he's crazy, he's surrounding him, but there's all these risks that he's taking, and he gets to this point where he's attacked and Souya starts his counterattack, and then the snow starts falling and Fujimoto gives up on him and says that it's over. And Shimada seems to think that in the moment as well, that it's over. He seems to agree. As the move starts piling, he's like, no matter how much I struggle, it'll bury me without mercy. The idea that Souya is this boss who quietly but mercilessly buries you in snow It's such a good visual. It's so good. I don't know what I'm going to choose as the thumbnail. Part of me would love to use the shot of him with his fan looking over the board, silent and overwhelming. Which is so fun because Ray, the presence around Ray is overwhelming, but it's a storm. It's a loud, violent storm. And Souya is an overwhelming, crashing, quiet snow. It's like, oh. I want to see Ray versus Souya, but I do not think we're going to see that in this season. I feel like it's going to come later. And it almost looks like Soya is sad, like he's waiting for Shimada to make the move. He's waiting for Shimada to keep the board alive. And meanwhile, Shimada is just like, I was staring at that captivatingly beautiful snow. And Ray's like, it's not over yet. And Fujimoto won't believe him. And Fujimoto's like, well, your mentor's too weak. And you just need to accept that. So I'm sorry. I understand you don't want to admit that your mentor's in a pinch. But don't make Shimada lose his reputation. And that mic drop moment where Ray notices the move on the board he can make and just sticks it on the board and leaves. You know they're going to be talking about that later on. You know they're going to bring it up. I want Shimada to have seen the move that Ray made and to tell him about it. Being like, you saw. You're like Souya. You saw the move that I could have made. You've got the gift. Don't give up. I want him to tell him that. And when Ray's like, I wanted to show him some backbone, but that's not right. This board hasn't died yet. These pieces are still alive. Oh, I love it. He makes the move and says they're not done yet. Yeah, and it's that spirit that Ray has, where Ray, he doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to admit that the pieces are dead until the very, very end. Keep fighting to the very end. Like Shimada gave up. Shimada quit. He didn't think he could do it, but Ray's like, no, you have to keep trying and keep seeing what's on the board. And Shimada kind of talks to him in a way early on with the workshop. He's like, you don't realize it, but you see this board differently than I do. And he's like, I was playing you because you see this board like Souya sees it. And I wanted to play you to see if it would help me see it in the same way. And Shimada kind of says in this episode, I still can't see it the way that you do. But you should hone that gift that you have because it's going to let you be on the same level as Souya one day. Oh. And just the look of defeat on his face. And then poor Ray when he's like, he conceded. And Fujimoto says it's the gap between them. But here's the thing. Souya says at this point when Ray's like, Ray refuses to believe that there's a gap. And he gets so sad. And then he puts the move on the table saying, look, here's what you could have done. And Souya does it at the exact same time. And says, it wasn't noticed, was it? You didn't notice the move that could have spared you. And then that's when Shimada realizes, he's like, this darkness isn't playing on an endless loop. I love the idea of something that's dazzling and bright, but yet is shrouded in darkness, the way he describes Souya. It's such a beautiful symbolism. But whenever Shimada sees the move, he's like, oh. No, like he reversed the situation. The threat mate is gone. And Soya's king is under check with that move. With just one move. And then Shimada sees it and he's like, oh, I missed it. The world shows me a completely different form. I love the light on there. And in that moment, Shimada had gave up being like, I tried my hardest. There was nothing I could do. And when Souya shows him the move that he could have made, Shimada's like, shit, I could have made that move. It was right there in front of me and I didn't. And I feel like to me, Shimada seeing the light in that moment is him realizing that that's why he keeps playing shogi. Because he's like, there's still, I could have done it. It was possible. It wasn't over. I just missed it. And I have to keep playing so that I can try not to miss it the next time. I don't know. I want to use Souya as the background, but then in that tiny gap from such a fatal wound. I saw a small flash of light. Yeah, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And then Souya says, "You have too much faith in me." That line, as Souya looks so defeated there himself. That's the thing. I feel like Souya is at this point, he's undefeated, but when he looks at Shimada, he's like, "You had me. You just missed it. But you had me. You gave up. You gave up and didn't you think you could beat me, but it was there. You just missed it." And that line, "You have too much faith in me." He's like, everybody thinks I'm undefeated and they get overwhelmed by me, but he's like, "I'm not infallible. I need somebody to beat me, and we're almost there." And I feel like it's gonna have to be Ray to face him, to be like, "No, you're good, but you're not unbeatable." Oh, damn. Yep. And so then, after 4 consecutive losses, they're traveling home. And I like that Ray gets him the meal, but then he sees that he's asleep. And he's like looking at that exhausted profile. I think of the path that he's taken. He's like, "I knew from the beginning that what's on the other side of the storm is just a more furious storm." It's like as you keep going up the ladder, it just gets stronger and stronger. And then at that point, what he says there is like, no matter how many times you fall, you have to pick up the scattered fragments of yourself and continuously pick yourself up and move forward. The people that give up, the people that get scattered by the storm and they don't pick themselves back up and move forward, they just either stay stagnant or they go back. They're not the ones that get to advance. But you have to just keep on weathering on with what's left of yourself and keep moving forward. It's wandering without end. And then Ray's face, when he looks like he's been crying on Shimada's behalf. And he's like, "Well, then why?" And I love that Ray realizes at this moment, he's like, I can't ask Shimada that question because Shimada's answer is going to be different than the answer I need. It's going to be different. My own answer is going to be different than Shimada's. All of us that play shogi and keep trying to be professionals and move up the ranks, we all have different reasons for doing it. And Shimada's reason is not necessarily going to be what benefits or connects to me. And it's like, no, that's right. Oh, he's like, I can no longer ask that question to this profile. Mm-hmm. And then that line that he says at the end of this episode, instead, I have to ask myself that question in the middle of that storm. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's just like, he's like, I can't, his answer to that question is going to be different than mine. So the end card. Going to the end of this episode, oh my god, this end card of the dragon himself, of Fujimoto, oh my god, that is so intense. I'm gonna look up now and see who is, let me see here, to see who is the end card here for episode 20. Oh my gosh, by Tetsuo Hara. Let me see. Tetsuo Hara. Who we got? They are Fist of the North Star. Okay, I've heard of Fist of the North Star. I've heard of that. So that's the mangaka for that series. Very hyper realistic. I like it. It looks so intense. It's so intense. All the muscles. Oh, I bet Fujimoto's a very offensive player. I'm just guessing. Guessing he's an offensive person. I don't feel like he's a defensive guy at all. Oh, this episode was so good. Oh, I love how much Ray has grown over the course of working with Shimada. It's so impressive. I feel like he's made such good strides over the course of this season, and we have 2 episodes left. So next week is the penultimate episode of season 1. I don't know. I don't think we're getting in a match because we only have 2 episodes left. But I feel like there may be some downtime. There needs to be some kind of, maybe the workshop ends. I don't know if the workshop with Shimada is going to end at this point or if he's going to keep coming back and facing him. I hope he does, but I guess we'll find out next week. So this episode was so good. It gets me, and I cannot wait to hear your comments down below about it. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more of March Comes In Like a Lion. Bye.